After months with his model mistress, the billionaire CEO returned. Her lawyer served a $100 million divorce. The penthouse door unlocked with a soft beep. Dominic Wright stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the San Francisco fog, his cashmere coat still carrying the scent of airport lounges and someone else's perfume. The city lights bled through floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. He smiled. That same smile he used on magazine covers. Confident, unbothered. Somewhere like he still owned everything inside these walls. But the man sitting at the dining table beneath the geometric chandelier did not smile back. Gregory Foster adjusted his reading glasses and looked up from a leather portfolio, his expression calm, clinical, like a surgeon who had already made the diagnosis. He did not stand. He did not greet. He simply waited. Dominic's smile faltered. "What is this?" he said slowly. The woman standing by the window turned. Vera, his wife. Her silhouette framed by the Golden Gate Bridge glowing faint and distant through the glass. She closed her tablet with a quiet click. Her voice when she spoke was steady, even, almost soft. "This is intellectual property reclamation." Dominic laughed once, sharp, dismissive. The same laugh he used on podcasts when journalists questioned his vision. "You are overreacting, Vera. I came home, did I not?" Gregory opened the folder. Inside were pages, documents, timestamps, code, patent filings with names that did not match the hands that built them. Dominic's face did not change at first. Then it did. "Welcome back to another powerful story, my beloved listeners. Kindly tell where you are watching from and what time it is where you are at. If you are new here, prepare for a story of betrayal, unexpected love, and what truly makes a family. Drop everything and listen closely. This tale of heartbreak and redemption might just change how you view love and family forever." And 4 months earlier, Dominic Wright had boarded a private jet to Bali with a 29-year-old wellness influencer whose skin glowed in every photograph and whose laughter sounded like wind chimes in expensive advertisements. He told Vera he needed space, clarity, time to think about the future of Axiom Systems, the company they had built together from nothing but lines of code and sleepless nights and dreams that tasted like cold coffee. Vera had nodded. She did not cry. She did not beg. She simply watched him pack his suitcase with linen shirts and leather sandals, items he never wore in San Francisco, items purchased for a life she was not part of. "Take all the time you need," she had said, and he did. While Dominic posed for Instagram stories on black sand beaches and attended sound healing ceremonies in jungle resorts, Vera did something quieter. She started looking, not through his phone, not through his emails, through the company files, through patent applications, and through the comet histories buried in their shared code repositories where every keystroke left a timestamp, every line of code carried an author, every innovation bore a signature that could not be erased. What she found was not infidelity, it was theft. For 3 years, Dominic had been filing patents under his name, sole inventor, sole contributor. 14 patents for machine learning models, natural language processing architectures, and neural networks that Vera had built at 2 in the morning while their daughter Maya slept down the hall and Dominic attended launch parties at the Battery with investors who thought he was a genius. He had not stolen money. He had stolen her, her work, her mind, her worth, and she had the receipts. Now Dominic stood in the penthouse he believed was still his kingdom, staring at a lawyer he did not hire and documents he did not expect. The fog rolled thicker beyond the windows, one swallowing the bridge, turning the city into something distant and unreachable. "What the hell is this?" he said again, but the confidence was thinner now, stretched tight like a wire about to snap. Gregory slid a page across the table. GitHub commit logs, timestamps showing Vera's credentials, code written at 3 in the morning, at 5, at midnight on Christmas Eve while Dominic slept off champagne from a holiday gala. "These are your patent filings, Mr. Wright," Gregory said. His voice was quiet, precise. "And these are the actual commit histories showing who wrote the code you claimed as yours." Dominic looked at the page, then at Vera. "You went through my work, Vera shook her head slowly. I went through my work. You just put your name on it. Silence settled between them, heavy and cold. Somewhere in the building, a pipe creaked. Outside, a car horn echoed faint and lonely through the fog. Dominic exhaled sharply and moved toward the table. His hands braced against the polished wood like he was steadying himself. This is ridiculous. You hired a patent attorney over a misunderstanding. 14 filings is not a misunderstanding, Gregory replied. It is a pattern. Vera watched her husband, this man she had built a company with, raised a child with, shared a bed with for 9 years. She watched him calculate. She could see it in his eyes. The way he was already searching for an angle, a pivot, and a way to spin this into something he could control. You have been lonely, Dominic said, his voice dropping into something softer, something that might have worked on her once. I needed space. That does not give you the right to dig through private accounts. Private, Vera repeated. The word tasted bitter. Company patents are not private, especially when you are the one filing them. Those were collaborative builds, Dominic said quickly. Not according to the timestamps, Gregory said. Or the internal emails where you told the board you developed these systems independently. The room seemed to tighten around them. The chandelier above cast sharp shadows across Dominic's face, carving lines she had never noticed before. You are making this ugly, Dominic said to Vera. We can handle this quietly. Settle this like adults. Quietly, Vera said, like the way you quietly told investors you were the sole technical mind behind Axiom. Like the way you quietly accepted awards for innovation I created. Like the way you quietly filed patents that had my fingerprints all over the code, but your name on the application. She picked up a thin folder from the side table and walked toward him. Her footsteps were soft against the marble floor. She placed the folder in front of him. Open it. Dominic hesitated. Then he did. Inside were patent applications. Clean. Official. Filed over the past 18 months under Vera's name, through her own legal entity. Applications for the machine learning architecture that powered Axiom's core platform, for the natural language models that made their products scalable, for the neural frameworks that venture capitalists called revolutionary when they wrote checks with Dominic's name on the pitch deck. Dominic stared at the pages. His jaw tightened. You filed these separately, he said quietly. I documented my work, yet Vera answered. Something you stopped doing 3 years ago. His eyes lifted to hers. You are trying to destroy me. Vera shook her head. I am protecting what I built. Dominic looked from the documents to Gregory, to the city beyond the glass, and for the first time since he walked through that door, something cracked in his expression. Not regret, not shame, just the slow, dawning realization that the game had changed and he had not seen it coming. You think this gives you power, he said. Vera's voice did not rise. It did not waver. No, it proves I was never powerless. Gregory closed his briefcase with a soft snap. Mr. Wright, he said, this is only the preliminary review. Dominic stared at Vera for a long moment. The woman he thought would always be there. The woman he thought would always forgive. The woman he had underestimated so completely that he forgot she was the one who taught him how to code in the first place. 8 years ago, Axiom Technologies was not a billion-dollar company with offices in 3 countries and a valuation that made venture capitalists salivate. It was a failing natural language processing startup bleeding money after a product launch that crashed within hours and left angry users and angrier investors in its wake. Dominic had charisma. He had vision. He had a pitch deck that could make people believe in things that did not exist yet. But he did not have a solution. Vera did. As she still remembered that night, the two of them sitting on the floor of their tiny Mountain View apartment, the carpet stained with coffee rings, the walls thin enough to hear their neighbors arguing about rent. Servers hummed in the corner, hot and loud, filling the room with a mechanical heartbeat. Takeout containers sat open and forgotten, noodles congealing in greasy pools. Dominic was pacing. He always paced when he panicked. His hands moved through his hair, his shirt untucked. His eyes wild with the kind of fear that came when everything you promised people was about to collapse. We are done, he kept saying. We are finished. The board is going to pull funding. We are finished. Vera sat cross-legged on the floor, Her laptop balanced on her knees, her fingers moving across the keyboard in steady rhythm. She did not look up. She did not respond to his panic. She just worked. "You are overthinking it," Dominic said, stopping mid-pace to look at her. "Just patch the API." He pushed something out. "We just need to buy time." Vera's fingers paused. She looked up at him. Her voice was calm. "Quiet. No. You are underestimating the problem. Patching will not fix this. We need to rebuild the entire language model from the ground up." Dominic stared at her. "That will take weeks." "It will take 3 days," Vera said, "if you let me work." And she did. 72 hours later, Axiom had a new neural architecture. The API did not crash. The language processing did not fail. An investor stopped calling with threats and started calling with congratulations. Dominic went on CNBC and called it a breakthrough. He did not mention Vera's name once. That became the pattern. Vera built, Dominic sold. She wrote the code at 2 in the morning while he rehearsed pitch decks. She debugged production systems while he schmoozed with journalists at rooftop bars overlooking the bay. She scaled infrastructure while he posed for magazine covers with headlines like "The Visionary Behind the Next AI Revolution." And she told herself it was fine, that partnerships required division of labor, that she did not need the spotlight as long as the work got done. But over time, something shifted. Visibility became confused with value. Dominic started believing his own press, started thinking that because people applauded when he walked into rooms, the foundation beneath him must be his creation. He forgot that buildings do not stand because of the architect's smile. They stand because someone poured the concrete, and Vera had poured every single piece. Now, standing in the penthouse with a lawyer and documents that could dismantle everything, Dominic was finally seeing the structure he had ignored. The woman he thought was background noise. The partner he thought was replaceable. The builder. Gregory stood and smoothed his jacket. "Mr. Wright, I will be in touch with your counsel regarding next steps." "Mrs. Wright, I will send the updated filings by end of week." Vera nodded. "Thank you, Gregory." The lawyer let himself out, the door closing with a soft click that echoed louder than it should have. Dominic and Vera stood alone in the penthouse, the city sprawling indifferent and glowing beyond the glass. The silence between them was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that came after something broke and could not be put back together. "When did you become this?" Dominic said quietly. Vera looked at him. "Become what?" "Cold. Calculating." She almost laughed. "I became a co-founder. I became the person who actually built this company while you took credit. I became someone who stopped waiting for you to see me." Dominic shook his head. "This is not you, Vera. You are better than this. You do not play dirty." "I am not playing," Vera said. "I am correcting the record." He stepped closer. His voice dropped. "You are going to destroy everything we built." Vera met his gaze without blinking. "Number 1, I am going to protect it. From you." Dominic stared at her, searching for something. Weakness, maybe. Hesitation. Some crack in her resolve that he could wedge open and manipulate back into submission. But there was nothing. Just clarity. Just a woman who had made a decision and would not be moved. "I loved you," he said. Past tense. "Yeah," Vera noted. Dominic looked away. "Yeah, past tense." He turned and walked toward the hallway. Stopped. Did not look back. "I will have my attorney contact yours." "Good," Vera said. The door closed behind him. The sound of his footsteps faded into the building's hum. The penthouse was silent except for the faint rush of fog pressing against the windows. Vera stood alone in the space she had paid for with code written at ungodly hours and ideas stolen in broad daylight. She looked out at the city, at the lights stretching toward the bay, at the Golden Gate Bridge disappearing into mist. She did not feel victorious. She felt tired, but she also felt something else, something she had not felt in a long time. Clear. 3,000 miles away, in a bright white studio in West Hollywood, Sienna Cade stood beneath ring lights that made her skin glow like something airbrushed and unreal. A photographer circled her, camera clicking in rapid bursts, and calling out instructions that blurred into background noise. "Chin up, eyes here, softer, perfect. Yes, hold that. Sienna smiled. She was good at smiling, good at tilting her head just right, at making her collarbones sharp and elegant, at looking effortlessly beautiful in ways that took hours of effort. Her phone buzzed on the table near the door. Once, twice, three times. She ignored it. Shoots meant focus, presence. What you did not check your phone when a brand was paying five figures for your face. But the buzzing did not stop. During a wardrobe change, while a stylist fussed with the drape of a silk blouse, Sienna finally glanced at her phone. 17 missed calls, 12 text messages, notifications from Twitter, from LinkedIn, from news apps she barely used. Her stomach dropped. She opened Twitter first. A tech journalist with 60,000 followers had posted a thread that was already viral. The word axiom appeared in the first line. So did the phrase IP dispute. So did governance concerns. Sienna scrolled faster. Her hands were shaking. And then she saw her name. Not bold, not front page, but there. Mentioned in passing, a California LLC reportedly linked to redirected patent filings. Sources suggest personal involvement. Her throat tightened. She stepped away from the stylist, away from the lights, out into the hallway where the air was cooler and the noise was distant. She dialed Dominic. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. Her heart was pounding now, a sick, heavy thud that made her feel dizzy. She opened her text messages, found the thread with Dominic. The last message was from 2 days ago. Miss you. When are you back? He had not responded. She scrolled up, found older messages, ones from weeks ago when he had sent her documents. Official-looking PDFs with legal language she did not fully understand. He had told her to sign them, told her it was just paperwork, standard business structuring, tax stuff, nothing to worry about. She had signed because she trusted him, because he was older, successful, confident, because he made her feel seen in a way that felt intoxicating after years of being told she was just a pretty face. Now she opened her email and searched for those PDFs, found them, opened the first one, Moonstone Ventures, LLC, registered agent, Sienna Cade, registered capital, $8.5 million. Her vision blurred. She read the line again, then again, 8.5 million. Her name, a company she did not remember forming, an address she did not recognize. She Googled Moonstone Ventures. Nothing came up, just a business registry listing with a San Mateo co-working space as the address. She called Dominic again. This time she did not wait for voicemail. She left a message, her voice tight and shaking. Dominic, I need you to call me, right now. I am seeing things online about Axiom, about IP theft. My name is in the articles. Call me back. Now. She hung up, stared at her phone, waited. Nothing. The studio door opened behind her. The photographer called out, Sienna, we are ready for the next look. She did not move. Sienna. She turned, forced a smile, the kind she had practiced 1,000 times. 1 second. But inside her mind was racing. IP theft, patent fraud, governance disputes. Her name tied to an LLC with millions of dollars she had never seen. She thought about her parents, her father who managed a tire shop in Fresno, her mother who worked double shifts at a hospital just to keep the lights on. $8.5 million was not a number that moved quietly through lives like theirs. It was not a number that appeared by accident. Sienna opened her contacts and scrolled until she found a name. An attorney a photographer friend had recommended months ago when Sienna started getting brand deals that required contract review. She sent a text. I need to talk to you. Today, if possible. It is urgent. The reply came within minutes. Can you do 4 p.m.? Yes, the photographer called again. Sienna. She slipped her phone into her bag, smoothed her hair, walked back into the studio. The lights were bright. The camera was waiting. She stood where they told her to stand. Wayne smiled when they told her to smile, tilted her chin and made her eyes soft and her lips just barely parted. But inside she felt something she had not felt since Dominic swept into her life with private jets and 5-star hotels and promises that felt like destiny. Fear. Because for the first time, she understood what she actually was to him. Not a partner, not even a girlfriend, a liability shield. And liability shields were the first things cut loose when the pressure built. You're back in San Francisco. Dominic sat alone in a hotel room in Soma, staring at his laptop screen. The suite was nice. Clean lines, minimalist furniture, a view of the bay that cost $800 a night. But it did not feel like home. Nothing felt like home anymore. His phone sat on the desk beside the laptop, screen dark, notifications silenced. He knew Sienna was calling. He knew his attorney was calling. He knew the board was calling. He did not answer any of them. Instead, he opened his email and scrolled through the messages that had arrived in the past 6 hours. Investors asking for clarification, journalists requesting comment, the audit committee scheduling an emergency review. His hands hovered over the keyboard. He started typing a response. Deleted it. Started again. Deleted again. There was no spin for this. No angle. No way to reframe stolen authorship as collaborative innovation. He had signed his name to work he did not do. He filed patents for code he did not write. Told a boardroom full of people that he was the technical genius behind Axiom when the real genius was at home raising their daughter and keeping the infrastructure from collapsing. And now the documentation was public. Timestamps did not lie. Commit histories did not forget. His laptop screen glowed in the dim room. He closed his email and opened GitHub instead. Pulled up the private repositories for Axiom's core platform. Where scrolled through the comment logs, Vera's name appeared again and again. 2 a.m. commits, 4 a.m. commits. Commits on Christmas, on New Year's Eve, on their anniversary. Dominic scrolled further back. Found the night they almost lost everything. The night the product crashed and the investors threatened to pull out. The 72-hour rebuild that saved the company. Every single comment was Vera. He had been in New York that week, meeting with venture capitalists, drinking expensive wine, and telling people about his vision while she saved them. Dominic closed the laptop, leaned back in the chair, stared at the ceiling. He had not meant for it to go this far. At first, it was just easier to let people assume, to not correct them when they called him the technical founder. To accept the credit because fighting for accuracy felt exhausting, and besides, he did plenty. He raised the money. He built the relationships. He was the face. But somewhere along the way, assumption became lie, and lie became theft. And now the woman he underestimated had receipts he could not refute. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A text from his attorney. We need to talk. Tonight. Dominic picked up the phone, stared at the message, put it back down. He stood and walked to the window. The city stretched out below him, lights glittering like circuitry, like code rendered in glass and steel. He used to look at this view and feel powerful, like he was part of something significant, like he mattered. Now he just felt small. Somewhere across the city, Vera was putting their daughter to bed, reading her a story maybe, kissing her forehead, being present. While he sat alone in a hotel room with nothing but his own choices and the consequences rising around him like water. His phone buzzed again. Another call from Sienna. He let it ring. In the penthouse, Vera sat on the edge of Maya's bed, her daughter's small hand wrapped around hers. Maya was 12, old enough to sense when something was wrong, young enough to not fully understand what. Is Dad coming home? Maya asked quietly. Vera brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face. Not tonight, sweetheart. Maya was silent for a moment. Then, is it because of me? Vera's chest tightened. No, baby. This has nothing to do with you. Then why? Vera took a slow breath. Sometimes grown-ups have problems they need to fix. Oh no, your dad and I are working through some things. Are you getting divorced? The question hung in the air, direct, unflinching, the way children asked things when they were scared. Vera did not lie. I do not know yet. Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. She was stubborn like that, strong. She got that from Vera. I do not want you to be sad, Maya whispered. Vera squeezed her hand. I am not sad, honey. I am just making sure things are fair. Fair how? Fair like when someone takes credit for your science project, Vera said gently. You would want people to know it was actually yours, right? Maya nodded slowly. That is what I am doing, Vera said, making sure people know what is mine. Maya looked at her mother for a long time. Then she leaned forward and wrapped her arms around Vera's neck. You are the smartest person I know, she whispered. Vera held her daughter close and felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, just shifting. In making room for what came next. Thank you, baby. She stayed until Maya fell asleep. Then she walked back to the living room, poured herself a glass of water, and sat in the chair by the window. The city was quieter now, softer. Fog rolled thick and heavy through the streets below. Her phone buzzed. A message from Gregory. Preliminary audit results attached. Call me when you have reviewed. Vera opened the attachment. Pages of findings. 14 patents. Millions in valuation tied directly to her uncredited work. Email threads where Dominic explicitly claimed sole technical development. Evidence. Clean. Undeniable. Damning. She scrolled to the end. Gregory's summary was brief. You have a strong case for breach of fiduciary duty, misappropriation of intellectual property, and reputational harm. Recommend moving forward with formal claim. Vera set the phone down, looked out at the fog swallowing the bridge. She did not want to destroy Dominic, but she would not let him erase her. And if protecting what she built meant tearing down what he pretended to own, then that was what she would do. Somewhere in the building, a door closed. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, faded. Vera sat alone in the silence, holding a glass of water that had gone cold, watching a city that did not care about betrayal or justice, or the quiet wars fought in penthouses above the fog. She thought about the operating agreement they had signed 9 years ago, the contract Dominic insisted on, the one with clauses about intellectual property attribution and fiduciary duty and material breach. He had written those clauses himself, insisted they were necessary. Protection, he called it, just in case. He never imagined the protection would be used against him. Vera smiled faintly, set the glass down, picked up her phone. She typed a message to Gregory. Move forward with the claim, she hit send. And just like that, the night was no longer about confrontation. It was about correction. And correction, Vera was learning, required more than documentation. It required resolve. Outside, the fog pressed closer against the glass, turning the city into something distant and dreamlike. But inside, Vera felt more awake than she had in years. The audit was just beginning. Yet the emergency board meeting was not held in the Palo Alto office, where Axiom had grown from a struggling startup into a company worth $900 million. It was held in a private conference suite at the Fairmont Hotel, neutral ground, with polished granite tables and windows that framed the San Francisco skyline like a painting of power no one actually owned. Dominic believed that controlling the room meant controlling the outcome. He was wrong. By the time the board convened at 2 in the afternoon, tech blogs were no longer whispering. They were reporting openly. TechCrunch ran a piece titled "Governance Concerns Emerge at Axiom Systems Amid IP Dispute." The information published an analysis of patent filing inconsistencies. Twitter threads dissected commit histories that suddenly became public record, carefully worded, factual, but loud enough that investors were starting to ask questions. Dominic arrived first, charcoal suit, the white shirt, no tie, the calculated casual confidence of a man who had given keynotes at Web Summit and been profiled in Wired. He walked into the conference room like he still owned it. Rowan Price was already seated at the far end of the table. He did not stand when Dominic entered. He simply looked up from his iPad, his expression calm and faintly amused, and nodded once. Dominic. Rough week. Dominic ignored him, pulled out a chair, set down his leather portfolio. Let's get this over with. And the board members filtered in slowly, independent directors with decades of experience and reputations that mattered more than loyalty. They took their seats quietly, glancing at each other but saying nothing. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Vera arrived last. She wore a navy blazer and carried a single folder. No laptop, no theatrics. She sat 3 seats down from Dominic and placed the folder on the table in front of her. Gregory Foster followed her in and took a seat along the wall, observing but not participating. He opened a legal pad and clicked his pen once. The sound was small, but it echoed. The board chair, Dr. Patricia Okafor, cleared her throat. She was in her 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, a former Stanford professor who had seen more startup implosions than most people had seen product launches. "Thank you all for making time on short notice," she began. "We are here to address concerns raised by our general counsel regarding intellectual property attribution and fiduciary responsibility. Dominic, I believe you have a statement prepared." Dominic leaned forward. His voice was steady, controlled. "This is a routine audit clarification. There have been some questions about collaborative work and individual credit, which is natural in any co-founder relationship. Vera and I have always worked as a team. Any discrepancies in documentation are administrative, not intentional. I am fully cooperating with the review process and expect this to be resolved quickly with minimal disruption." He sat back, looked around the table, confident. Dr. Okafor nodded slowly. "Thank you. Vera, do you have a response?" Vera did not open her folder. She did not need to. She had memorized every page. "This is not a documentation error," she said quietly. "And this is a pattern of intellectual property theft spanning 3 years. 14 patents filed under Dominic's name as sole inventor for work I created. Commit histories, timestamps, internal emails, all of it shows clear authorship. I have the evidence. Gregory has reviewed it, and I am formally disputing every single filing." The room went silent. Dominic's jaw tightened. "Vera, this is not the forum for personal grievances." "This is not personal," Vera replied. "This is fiduciary responsibility. Can't you sign an operating agreement that requires accurate attribution? You violated it, repeatedly." Rowan Price leaned forward slightly, his fingers steepled. "I have reviewed some of the preliminary findings. The evidence is compelling." Dominic turned to him sharply. "You have no stake in this discussion, Rowan." Rowan smiled faintly. "Actually, I do." He slid his iPad across the table. On the screen was a cap table, Axiom's ownership structure, broken down by shareholder. Dominic stared at it. Then his eyes found the line that mattered. Rowan Price, 23% equity. Dominic looked up slowly. "Since when?" "Since 18 months ago," Rowan said. "I have been acquiring shares from early employees exercising options. Quietly, legally, at market rate." Dominic's face went pale. Vera reached for her folder, opened it, slid a single page across the table toward Dr. Okafor. "And I hold 19%, Vera said. The air in the room shifted, tightened. Every board member leaned forward slightly, reading the document, doing the math in their heads. 19 plus 23, 42%, not a majority, but close enough to matter, close enough to shift every vote, close enough to shatter the illusion of Dominic's control. Dr. Okafor looked at Vera. "You have been acquiring equity independently." "Yes," Vera said, "using my salary, my stock grants, my bonuses. Everything I earned, I protected myself." Dominic stood abruptly. "This is a coup. You are staging a hostile takeover of a company I built." "You did not build it alone," Vera said. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. "And you certainly did not build the technology." "I did." Rowan leaned back in his chair. "Combined with the 2 independent directors who have expressed concerns about IP ethics, that puts governance firmly in question." Dr. Okafor removed her glasses. "Dominic, I think you need to sit down." He did not sit. He stood there, with hands braced on the table, breathing hard. "You are all making a mistake. If you do this, if you suspend me, the market will panic. Our valuation will drop. You will hurt everyone in this room." "Perhaps," Dr. Okafor said, "but we will do it with integrity." She looked around the table. "I am calling for a vote. The motion is to suspend Dominic Wright as CEO pending completion of the intellectual property audit and resolution of fiduciary breach claims. All in favor?" One by one, hands rose. Dr. Okafor, in favor. The CFO, in favor. The independent directors, in favor, in favor. Rowan Price did not hesitate. In favor. And then all eyes turned to Vera. Dominic looked at her across the table. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Not anger, not defiance, just the faint ghost of recognition. The realization that the woman he underestimated had been 10 steps ahead the entire time. Vera met his gaze. Her voice was clear. In favor. The motion passes, Dr. Okafor said. Dominic, effective immediately, you are suspended from executive duties pending audit completion. You will retain board observer status but no operational authority. Dominic stared at her, then at Vera, then at the faces around the table that had once applauded his vision and now watched him with the cool detachment of people protecting their investments. He grabbed his portfolio, turned, walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. You will regret this, he said without turning around. No, Vera replied. You will. The door closed behind him. The sound echoed in the silence. Dr. Okafor exhaled slowly. We will need interim leadership. I propose Vera Kaczynski as acting CEO. Rowan nodded, seconded. The vote was unanimous. Vera sat very still, her hands folded on the table, her face calm. But inside something was roaring. Not triumph, not revenge, just the steady, relentless hum of work that had finally been seen. Now let me pause here for just a moment, my friends. Because if you are still with me, if this story is gripping you the way I hope it is, I need you to do something. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who has ever been overlooked, someone who built something in silence while someone else took the credit. Drop a comment and tell me what you are feeling right now. I read every single one, and if you have not subscribed yet, this is your moment. Because stories like this, stories about accountability and quiet strength, this is what we do here at Untold Desires by Mr. Lewis. Now let's continue. The news reached the market within an hour. Dominic had not even left the hotel when his phone started vibrating so hard it nearly fell off the granite countertop in the lobby bathroom, where he stood gripping the sink, staring at his own reflection like he was looking at a stranger. When Axiom System stock dropped 4 points in the first 30 minutes of trading after the suspension became public. Not catastrophic, but enough to trigger algorithmic sell-offs, enough to make financial analysts start writing threads, enough to turn whispers into headlines. CEO suspended amid IP governance review. Axiom faces internal leadership shakeup. Co-founder dispute raises questions about attribution. Dominic scrolled through his phone with shaking hands. Read text messages from investors, missed calls from journalists, Slack notifications from employees who suddenly did not know who was in charge. His attorney finally got through. Dominic, where are you? We need to talk. Now. I am at the Fairmont, Dominic said. His voice sounded hollow even to himself. Stay there. I am 10 minutes away. Dominic ended the call, looked at himself in the mirror again. The man staring back was still wearing a custom suit. He still had the same face that had been on magazine covers. But something fundamental had shifted. The illusion of control had evaporated, and what remained was just a man who had stolen credit and called it collaboration. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a Twitter notification. Someone had tagged him. He opened it. A tech journalist with 80,000 followers had posted a side-by-side comparison. On one side, a GitHub commit log showing Vera's username and timestamp. On the other side, a patent filing listing Dominic as sole inventor for the exact same code. The caption read, "Seems like someone has some explaining to do." The tweet had been live for 6 minutes. It already had 4,000 retweets. Dominic closed Twitter, opened his email, found a message from the audit committee with the subject line, "Preservation Notice." He opened it. The language was clinical, procedural, but the meaning was clear. He was required to preserve all electronic communications, code repositories, patent correspondence, and financial records related to intellectual property filings. Any deletion or alteration of records could result in further legal action. Dominic read the email twice. Then he sat down on the marble bench near the sinks and put his head in his hands. He had not meant for it to go this far. He had not planned to steal. It had just been easier to let assumptions stand. Easier to accept credit than to correct people. Easier to believe his own story than to admit the truth. But easy had consequences, and the consequences were no longer theoretical. Across the city in a bright corner office, With exposed brick and succulents lining the windowsill, Sienna Cade sat across from an attorney named Monica Reyes, who specialized in liability protection for influencers and public figures caught in corporate entanglements. Monica was in her 40s, calm and precise, with reading glasses perched on her head and a yellow legal pad covered in notes. "Walk me through it again," Monica said. "When did you first see the incorporation documents?" "Last week," Sienna said. "They came in a FedEx envelope. I thought it was a brand contract at first, but it was not. It was an LLC. With my name as registered agent. And you signed it." Sienna hesitated. "I think so. He sent me documents a few months ago. Said it was tax stuff. Structuring for future business ventures. I did not really read them. I just signed where he told me to." Monica wrote something down. "Do you have copies?" Sienna pulled out her phone, opened her email, found the PDFs Dominic had sent, forwarded them to Monica. Monica opened them on her laptop, read in silence for 2 full minutes. Then she looked up. "Sienna, this LLC was used to receive funds tied to intellectual property that is now under dispute. If the court finds that these funds were misappropriated, well, you could be named as a co-conspirator." Sienna felt the room tilt. "I did not know. I swear I did not know." "I believe you," Monica said. "But belief does not matter in court. What matters is what you can prove. Do you have text messages, voicemails, anything where Dominic told you this was legitimate?" Sienna scrolled through her messages, found a text from 3 months ago. Dominic had written, "Just standard business setup, babe. Trust me. Makes everything cleaner for taxes." She showed Monica. Monica nodded. "Good. That helps. But we need more. We need to establish that you had no knowledge of the IP theft and no involvement in the filings. And we need to distance you from him, publicly if necessary." Sienna's throat tightened. "You mean break up with him?" Monica looked at her evenly. "I mean protect yourself. Because if this goes to litigation, and it will, you do not want to be standing next to him when the judgment comes down." Sienna thought about Dominic, about the private jets and the 5-star hotels and the way he made her feel like she mattered, like she was more than just a face, like she was part of something important. But she also thought about her parents, about the tire shop and the double shifts, and the way $8.5 million could destroy lives if it turned out to be stolen. "What do I do?" she whispered. Monica leaned forward. "First, you retain me formally. Second, why you stop all communication with Dominic unless it is through attorneys. Third, you prepare a statement clarifying that you had no operational knowledge of Axiom's IP processes and that you are cooperating fully with any inquiries." Sienna nodded slowly. "Okay. And fourth," Monica said, "you accept that the man you thought you knew might not be who he said he was." Sienna looked down at her hands, at the rings Dominic had bought her, at the manicure paid for with money she suddenly was not sure was clean. "I think I already know that," she said quietly. Monica handed her a tissue. "Good. Then we have a place to start." That evening, Dominic stood in his hotel room staring at his laptop screen. He had drafted and deleted 4 different emails to Vera. Apologies, explanations, justifications. None of them sounded right because none of them were true. The truth was simple. He had stolen her work because it was easier than admitting she was smarter than him. He had filed patents under his name because investors wanted to believe in a singular genius, not a partnership. He had erased her contributions because visibility had become his addiction, and he could not share the spotlight without feeling like he was disappearing. But now the spotlight was gone, and what remained was just the truth, cold and unforgiving. It reflected in commit logs and timestamps and emails he could not delete fast enough to matter. His phone buzzed, a text from his attorney. "We need to discuss settlement options. Call me." Dominic stared at the message. Settlement meant admitting fault. Settlement meant reattribution. Settlement meant the world would know that the genius CEO of Axiom Systems was a fraud who built his empire on someone else's code. He typed a response. "Not ready to settle." The reply came immediately. "And then prepare for litigation. And Dominic, this will get worse before it gets better." Dominic put the phone down, walked to the window, looked out at the city he thought he had conquered. Somewhere out there, Vera was putting their daughter to bed, reading her a story, being present, being real, while he stood alone in a hotel room with nothing but his choices and the walls closing in. The courtroom in San Francisco Superior Court was smaller than Dominic expected. No drama, no cameras, just fluorescent lighting, worn wooden benches, and a judge who looked like she had seen 1,000 cases just like this and been unimpressed by all of them. Dominic sat on one side with his attorney, a woman named Rebecca Chan, who specialized in corporate defense and had a reputation for making bad situations slightly less catastrophic. Vera sat on the other side with Gregory Foster. She wore a gray suit, no jewelry, no expression. The judge, Honorable Lisa Mendoza, reviewed the case file in silence. 2 full minutes passed. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the faint shuffle of papers. Finally, she looked up. "This is a petition to enforce Section 9 of the operating agreement between Mr. Wright and Mrs. Kaczynski, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Gregory said, "and the claim is material breach through intellectual property misattribution." "Correct." Judge Mendoza turned to Rebecca. "Counselor, your response." Rebecca stood. "Your Honor, while there were some administrative inconsistencies in patent filings, this was collaborative work. Mr. Wright and Mrs. Kaczynski built Axiom together. Parsing individual contributions years after the fact is impractical and ignores the reality of co-founder relationships." Judge Mendoza looked at Gregory. "Your rebuttal." Gregory stood. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Your Honor, we have commit histories showing exact timestamps and authorship for every line of code in question. When we have internal emails where Mr. Wright explicitly claims sole development to the board of directors. We have 14 patents filed with his name as sole inventor for work demonstrably created by Mrs. Kaczynski. This is not a gray area. This is documented theft." Rebecca tried again. "Your Honor, intent matters. There is no evidence Mr. Wright intended to defraud." Judge Mendoza held up a hand. "Intent is not required under Section 9. The operating agreement is clear. Misattribution constitutes material breach regardless of intent. The question is whether the misattribution occurred." She looked at the documents in front of her. Commit logs, patent filings, email threads. "It occurred," she said. Dominic felt something cold settle in his chest. Judge Mendoza continued. "I am granting enforcement of the breach clause. 14 patents will be reattributed to Vera Kaczynski as sole inventor. Mr. Wright will pay compensatory damages in the amount of $12 million, representing the estimated value of reputational and financial harm. Mrs. Kaczynski retains her independent equity holdings. Joint custody of the minor child is maintained with primary residence assigned to Mrs. Kaczynski based on established stability." She looked at Dominic. "Mr. Wright, you built a company on someone else's genius and called it yours. That ends today." The gavel came down, not loud, not dramatic, just final. Dominic sat frozen. 12 million, reattribution, public record. The world would know. Rebecca leaned over and whispered, "We can appeal." Dominic shook his head slowly. "No, because what was the point? The evidence was not going to change. The commit histories were not going to lie. The truth was not going to bend just because he wished it would." Outside the courthouse, a handful of tech journalists waited. Not a media circus, just enough to matter. When Vera walked past them without comment, Gregory held up a hand. No statement at this time. Dominic exited through a side door, got into a car, disappeared into traffic, and just like that, the legal chapter closed. But the consequences were just beginning. 5 days later, a letter arrived at Dominic's apartment. Certified mail, official seal, United States Patent and Trademark Office. He opened it with hands that shook slightly. The letter was brief, professional, devastating. Notice of inquiry regarding inventor attribution, inconsistencies in patent applications filed between 2019 and 2022. Potential violations of 35 U.S.C. Section 115 regarding inventor oath accuracy. Request for preservation of all related documents and communications. Failure to comply may result in civil penalties and referral for further investigation. Dominic read it twice. Then he set it down very carefully on the kitchen counter and stared at it like it might catch fire. When an inquiry was not a charge, but it was close. Close enough that his name would be flagged. Close enough that future filings would be scrutinized. Close enough that the label of fraud would follow him, even if no formal charges ever came. He called Rebecca. She answered on the second ring. "I just got a letter from the USPTO," he said. "I know. I got copied. We need to respond formally. Full cooperation. Document everything." Dominic closed his eyes. "What does this mean long term?" It means your professional reputation takes a hit. It means future ventures will require disclaimers. It means you are no longer the untouchable visionary. You are the guy who got caught." Dominic did not respond. Rebecca's voice softened slightly. "Dominic, the best thing you can do now is accept it. Cooperate. Rebuild quietly. Do not fight what you cannot win." He hung up, stood in the small kitchen of his apartment that cost $4,000 a month and felt like a cage. He thought about the penthouse, about the office in Palo Alto with his name on the door, about the keynote stages and the magazine profiles and the version of himself that existed in other people's minds. All of it built on a lie, and now the lie was public record. Meanwhile, at Axiom's Palo Alto headquarters, Vera stood in the executive conference room for the first time as CEO. Not acting, not interim, just CEO. The board had voted unanimously that morning. She looked around the table at faces that had once deferred to Dominic and now looked to her. The CFO, the VP of engineering, the head of product, people who had always respected her but never quite seen her as the leader. Now they did. "We have work to do," Vera said. "Patent corrections are being filed. Investor communications are going out today. We are committing to full transparency. No spin, no PR tricks, just the truth." The CFO nodded. "The market is responding well. Aisha, we are up 3 points since your appointment was announced." "Good," Vera said. "Let's keep that momentum. I want quarterly reviews restructured to include technical attribution. Every feature, every product launch, I want clear documentation of who built what. We are not repeating the mistakes of the past." "Agreed," the VP of engineering said. Vera looked at each of them. "I know this transition has been difficult, but we are going to come out of this stronger, not because we hid the problem, because we faced it." The meeting continued for another hour. Roadmaps, timelines, strategy. When it ended, Vera returned to her office, the one that used to be adjacent to Dominic's, the one with the view of the bay and the whiteboards covered in technical diagrams she had drawn at 6 in the morning before anyone else arrived. She sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, looked at the commit history for Axiom's core platform. Her name appeared again and again. Thousands of commits. Years of work. Finally visible. Her phone buzzed, a text from Maya. "Mom, are you coming home for dinner?" Vera smiled. "Yes, baby. I will be there at 6. She closed the laptop, stood, looked out at the bay where the fog was just beginning to roll in. She had not destroyed Dominic. She had simply stopped letting him erase her, and that, she realized, was enough. 3 weeks later, Dominic cleared out his office. There was no ceremony, no farewell speech. Just a few cardboard boxes and a security guard who waited politely by the door. He packed his things slowly. Books, a framed photo of him and Maya at her 8th birthday, a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Coder," a gift from an intern who did not know any better. He left the awards, the plaques, the framed magazine covers. They felt like someone else's life now. As he carried the last box toward the elevator, he passed Vera in the hallway. She was walking toward a meeting, tablet in hand, so talking quietly with the VP of product. They stopped, looked at each other. "You did what you thought was right," Dominic said. "I did what was necessary," Vera replied. He nodded once. "I hope it was worth it." Vera looked past him toward the office he was leaving, the skyline beyond, the company they had built. "It was," she said, "not because you lost, because I stopped disappearing." Dominic had no response to that. He stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. And that was the last time they spoke as co-founders. That weekend, Dominic met Maya at a cafe in the Mission. Quiet, unpretentious. The kind of place where nobody cared about tech industry drama. Maya arrived with Vera, who gave Dominic a brief nod and then left them alone. Dominic and Maya sat outside. The air was cool. A barista brought Maya a hot chocolate and Dominic a black coffee. Neither of them touched. "Are you mad at Mom?" Maya asked. Dominic looked at his daughter. "No, I am not mad." "Then why did you leave?" "Because I made mistakes," he said. "Big ones." Maya stirred her hot chocolate. "Mom said you took credit for her work." Dominic felt his throat tighten. "She is right. I did." "Why?" He thought about lying, about softening it. But Maya deserved better. "Because I wanted people to think I was smarter than I am," he said quietly. "And it was easier to take credit than to share it." "That is not fair," Maya said. "No, it is not." She looked at him with those serious eyes that were so much like Vera's, it hurt. "Are you going to fix it?" she asked. "I am trying," Dominic said. "But some things you cannot fix. You just have to live with what you did." Maya nodded slowly. "Do you still love me?" Dominic reached across the table and took her hand. "Always. That never changes, even if you messed up. Even then." Maya squeezed his hand. "Okay." They sat together for a while, not talking, just being. And for the first time in months, Dominic felt something other than shame. He felt forgiveness, not from Vera, not from the board, not from the world, from his daughter. And somehow that mattered more than all the rest. 6 months later, San Francisco looked the same. Fog rolling through the bay, traffic on the 101, glass towers reflecting a sky that changed by the hour. But inside Axiom Systems, everything had changed. The stock had recovered. Investor confidence was up. Two major partnerships had been announced. The tech press was calling it a turnaround story. And Vera was on the cover of Forbes with a headline that read, "The woman who built Axiom and finally got credit for it." She did not hang the cover in her office. She sent it to her mother. Dominic had moved to Austin, started advising early-stage startups, kept a low profile. He video called Maya every Tuesday and Thursday, sent child support on time, did not ask for more than he deserved. Sienna had rebranded, focused on wellness content and authenticity. She did a podcast interview about being used in corporate schemes and the importance of reading contracts. It went viral. She turned her story into a teaching moment. People healed in different ways, but they all moved forward. One evening, Vera stood on the balcony of the penthouse, looking out at the bridge disappearing into fog. Maya was inside doing homework. Music played softly from the kitchen. Her phone buzzed. On a text from Rowan. "Dinner next week?" "No agenda, just dinner." Vera smiled, typed back. "Sure." She slipped the phone into her pocket and looked out at the city that had witnessed her erasure and her reclamation. She thought about the Stoics, about Marcus Aurelius, about the idea that you have power over your mind, not outside events. She could not control Dominic's choices, could not control the theft, could not control the years of invisibility, but she could control her response. And her response had been documentation, preparation, resolve, not revenge, correction, and correction, she had learned, was the most powerful form of justice. Inside, Maya called out, "Mom, I need help with my coding assignment." Vera turned from the view. "Coming, baby." She walked back into the light and warmth of the home she had protected, the life she had built, the truth she had defended, and she realized something she had not felt in a very long time. Peace. My friends, and if you are still here, if you have walked this entire journey with me, then you understand something powerful. This was not a story about revenge. It was a story about visibility, about refusing to be erased, about the quiet strength it takes to stand up and say, "This is mine, I built this, and you will not take credit for my work anymore." Vera did not win because Dominic lost. She won because she finally stood in her own truth, because she stopped shrinking to make someone else comfortable, and because she understood that real power is not about control, it is about accountability. So let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where someone took credit for your work? Where you stayed silent because speaking up felt too hard, too risky, too uncomfortable? Drop a comment and tell me your story. I want to hear it. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own quiet battles, I need you to do three things right now. First, should he hit that like button? Let me know the story mattered. Second, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is building in silence. Someone who needs to be reminded that their work has value even if no one is applauding. And third, subscribe to Untold Desires by Mr. Lewis. Because this is what we do here. We tell stories that do not just entertain. We tell stories that heal, that empower, that remind you that standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. The Stoics taught us that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Vera could not control the theft, but she controlled her response. And that response changed everything. So here is my challenge to you. The next time someone tries to diminish your contribution, document it. The next time someone tries to take credit for your work, speak up. The next time you feel invisible, remember that visibility is not given. It is claimed. You do not win by overpowering others. When you win by refusing to abandon yourself. Vera Kaczynski did not destroy Dominic Wright. She simply stopped letting him erase her. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing that stories like this matter. Because they do. And so do you. Until next time, my friends, stand firm, document your worth, and never let anyone convince you that your contributions do not matter. Because they do. You do. Always.